Today's episode of Market Talk is brought to you in part by Growmark FS. Keeping up on the latest in ag is a challenge to say the least, but there are experts nearby ready to help. You'll find them at your local FS. You can trust them to bring you customized agronomic grain and energy solutions born of the latest thinking. That's because FS specialists receive continuous training that keeps them current on latest trends, practices, and technologies. So you'll get local expertise that's both exceptional and up to date. Visit fssystem.com to learn how FS is bringing you what's next. And good afternoon. Welcome into the month of August and the Monday, August 2nd edition of Market Talk, brought to you in part by our friends at Growmark FS. Thanks for joining us, making us part of your day today. I am your host, Jesse Allen. Thank you for being here. MarketTalkAg.com. That's our home on the web, MarketTalkAg.com. Find our social media, streaming links there, radio affiliates, everything all online, MarketTalkAg.com. Well, we started off with a strong day here to get the month of August going in the grain markets, led by the wheat market. Got a lot to talk about there. Good day in livestock as well. Plenty to discuss here on the show today. Let's bring in Bryan Doherty, our good friend with Total Farm Marketing. And Bryan, good afternoon to you, sir. And, start the month of August in a rather strong way, I would say. Wheat markets kind of were the star of the show today, but they ended up pulling corn and beans with it here. Really just overall a nice way to start a Monday and start a new month, I think.
You bet. Sharp gains in the wheat market, downgrades to the Russian crop. So that got the ball rolling. It was reported this morning through various sources, but there's a private ag analytical firm, IKAR, don't know them, but their estimate of the 2021 Russian wheat crop dropped to 78.5 million metric tons. That's a 6.5 million metric ton decline. So just in round numbers, if you want to use 35 million bushels per metric ton, you're talking 6 times 35, or if you want to use 40 to keep the math simple, so 240 million bushels, a lot of wheat. So the market really dug into that. Couple that with, of course, just a terrible looking spring wheat crop here for the U.S., and you've got the technical momentum. So you had wheat prices lurching forward, and some of the contracts went to new contract highs. So when we look at Chicago, it didn't. The highs from late April, early May still hold. But if you look at the deferred contracts in the Minneapolis wheat, new highs there again established. You've got real strength in Kansas City wheat approaching its contract highs. So you got some really, really good activity in the wheat market today. Just really robust, really strong activity. New crop wheat prices too for July Chicago. I just want to point that out. 722 or 721 and 3/4 is where it closed. High is 723.5. Jesse, new contract high. So if you think about planting wheat, here we are, 2nd of August. You're starting to look at $7 plus board wheat for next year already.
Yeah, very robust market there on the wheat side. And, you mentioned the terrible looking spring wheat crop. We got that confirmed with last week's Wheat Quality Council tour in North Dakota. You mentioned the Russian estimates. And, I know a lot of wheat millers around the globe looking for good quality wheat. There's still plenty of wheat out there, but that good quality milling wheat is seemingly hard to find. And one has to wonder if that's going to cause us to push these prices even higher here globally in the coming weeks and months ahead.
One does have to wonder. And it's not just wheat or milling wheat, it's soybeans, it's corn, it's all of these commodities that have been sort of on this big decline of projected world carryout ending stock numbers over the last year. And so when you have some disruptions or some additional weather events or perceived weather events, boy, it sure doesn't take long for the market to kind of catch fire and move kind of quickly. And, we're in weather markets. So Russia, Ukraine, Europe had a lot of rain lately. The others have stayed drier. And it's amazing how fast, quickly, or how fast and how quick perceptions change in the marketplace.
Very, very true. I want to talk corn and soybeans today. They got pulled along by the wheat market. Corn more so than beans. Beans did their best, though, to kind of tag along there, even though there's pressure at bean oil. But it feels like we've really settled into a range here in both quarter soybeans, Brian. We were kind of at the top end of that range Friday. We broke. Then we got down towards the low end today. Traders bought that dip and came back with the strength in wheat. And it really just seems like we're kind of just setting up that range in both commodities here as we get into the month of August, and really just seemingly waiting for more data to confirm the good and or the bad, depending on what part of the ag belt you're in.
Yeah, great observations. Yeah, you really do have kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly in the corn and soybeans this year, because there's some really good crop out there, and we talk to farmers throughout the country, and you've got just some outstanding crop, and you've been out and about, you see it. I mean, there's just good crop. There's a lot of crop that's fair, which means it could be good. But if you look like at the drought monitor maps and you look at like the northern half of Iowa, I think I might have touched on this last week, the percentage of the corn crop in Iowa rated poor, very poor, doesn't match up with either moderate or extremely dry or whatever the drought ratings are. The crop should be rated. So timely rains have helped push that crop along, and we've kind of made the argument all year that as you get into late July and August, when you really need moisture, if you don't have the subsoil, that may have some impacts. We got a lot of weather market to go yet. So yes, corn did follow wheat up, and yes, it is consolidating, but it had a pretty good range today, and today's range was higher, the higher high than Friday, the lower low. So you had an outside day, nice solid close, up 14 in December corn. But to your point, we're at 559. The market is traded now 5 months at 550, give or take on either side. So 5 consecutive months. So the bigger picture is consolidation. It's almost this simple. I don't want to oversimplify, but it's almost this simple when you look at the carryout, Jesse. When you got a 2 billion bushel carryout, or let me start with this: 3 billion we were looking at last year, a year ago. 3 billion bushel carryout. We had a lot of threes in front of corn. And then we got down to 2 billion, had a lot of 4 in front of corn. And then you get down to a billion bushels, roughly, you got 5s in front of corn. So it's that's why we're trading where we are. You've got tight supply, good demand, and still uncertainty with the weather.
Very true. I want to pull up the latest drought monitor map here as well on our video feed, just to kind of pinpoint this. And you mentioned I've been out and about and traveling quite a bit lately on the weekends and seeing a lot of this crop. And I know you talk to producers all over the country, and really, I mean, I think this map, it just shows the haves and the have-nots. You look at that, you draw a line basically through Iowa and go north and west, and you got that drought issues there, and then you go south and east, and really no drought issues. And I just wonder, as we get into the month of August, soybeans, we're going to be looking at that crop that's typically made here in the month of August. But with a dry forecast ahead, I wonder what that soybean crop is going to look like, because on the corn side, I'm starting to hear some tip back issues in parts of Minnesota. We know there's some issues in the Dakotas. And even watching Iowa closely on the corn crop. But looking at soybeans, this is kind of the D-Day time for beans. And look at this drought monitor. It's kind of the way it's been all year. It's really shaping us up to have an interesting couple of weeks ahead, Brian.
Yeah, it's boiled down now to timely rains, and timely rains have helped propel the crop along. And for others who haven't had those, it's really a struggle. But the language has been all spring and summer. Well, don't worry about weather too much now. It's August that matters. August that counts for beans. Well, here we are. It's August 2nd. So when you look at the 6 to 10 day forecast, you look at some of these forecasts that don't really offer a lot for those western states, you do have to wonder if the bean market isn't somewhat poised. Now, that being said, it's just kind of stuck. It's dead right now. It was only at 4 cents today. When you have wheat up 26 in Chicago and corn at 14, you'd sure think that beans could do a little better than that. The problem in the beans is just you don't have anything else going for it right now. The crush pace has been slower. Exports have been slow. Inspections have been generally slow. So there just isn't a lot that's promoting at these prices rally potential. But boy, I'm surprised this weather hasn't provided a little more spark to these November soybeans.
It just feels like we're maybe waiting on more hard data, Brian. And I know we got crop tours coming up and more private estimates and everything else. And I know you hear it from clients. I hear it. I see it. You see it with social media, with Twitter and pictures and everything else and talking. But, getting some of these different crop tours out there and verifying in these fields, it seems like that might be the spark that the trade is waiting for, so to speak. but I'm also curious if maybe some of these crop tours find some things that they don't expect, maybe some better yields in some parts of the country that we're maybe watching closely right now, especially I think like parts of Northwest Iowa, Bryan, Southwest Minnesota.
A lot of parts of the country, the market's waiting for, as you said, for more data, more information. Sometimes, though, I always kind of caution customers. I say it's what you're not hearing, and you're not hearing a lot of vocal concerns in Illinois or Ohio or Indiana or Michigan. These are highly rated crops. And so when you don't hear that, but what you do hear is you see a lot of the and here where it's kind of tough. And we all get that. That's human nature. We focus on where things are tough. But we're also talking to people who, they'll kind of tell you, are holding their breath. This might be their best crop ever. So how does that all balance out, both in corn and soybeans? We don't know yet. We'll have to wait and see. Beans are a fickle crop. August is a big month. Corn, boy, talking to some guys, they might say, hey, I might be at 250 bushels an acre this year. My best is 220, 210. Well, that might make up for someone in South Dakota who gets 160 and maybe they're at 200. So we just got to see where this all settles out. Just need some time.
Definitely. And I think moving forward, the one maybe nice thing is we've seen some of the volatility come out of the markets here in the last couple of weeks, and that's maybe allowing farmers to actually sit down and look at their marketing plans and maybe do that mid-season revisit, so to speak, with their overall plan without facing all this up and down volatility and cash flow in these markets, Bryan, because it's kind of dissipated just a little bit.
Yes, it is. And um, volatility is one of those things. So there's two things I wanted to mention here. One, we're at a high enough price level, and as I mentioned earlier, we're at the same prices we've been for multiple months now. So farmers who can kind of look out their back window and see things that look pretty good, they probably have a more comfort zone selling. I had one kind of interesting conversation today with a guy. He just goes, I can't believe I passed up $6 corn. And I said, well, remember where you were in $6 corn. It was a situation where you were very dry. It was a while ago. You weren't going to sell into that. And he said, no, I think I was greedy. I said, well, that might have been part of it, but this has been a different year in the sense that we didn't start out, let's say, at $5 corn and go to $6. We started out at $4 last fall. And so you're probably making sales all the way. So there's a lot of things that come into play. And so I need to kind of keep all that into account as well. We just kind of got to hold on. We've got to report out August 12th. We got crop tours, as you said. There's a lot of things that are coming on board that we need to really think about here.
Very true. Let's talk livestock, Bryan. The hog market, cattle markets looking very solid today, especially that hog market. Pork cutout values looking like they're closing higher on the day. And I know this hog market after last week and the African swine fever worries really needed a good start to the week and month here. And it looks like we got it here today, Bryan.
Yeah, there's as we look at the whole meat complex too, and you start looking at what you've got out there. So Dominican Republic had African swine fever last week. We've got good demand underneath all of the meat markets, and then yet now we got this COVID-19 variant that's kind of raising its, rearing and raising its ugly head, and the meat markets are going to be in real flux right now. My bias is to kind of cut through all this chatter and take a look at maybe the idea that we need to defend, especially in the live cattle prices, deferred contracts. We've been trading up around 140. We've been targeting it all year. We like the move in hogs. We like the cash index in hogs. But again, we got to think that hog herd was on the grow this year, and that the loophole of short supply due to COVID-19 last summer is behind the market. Now it's just a matter of when we're trying to work with everything.
And that's a good way to put it, I think. And overall, you mentioned the COVID worries, the Delta variant, and obviously that could have an impact on our meat markets moving forward if that continues to spread. We hope it doesn't. But it would just seem to me that, like you said, defending a little bit, especially in live cattle, would just make sense here moving forward. Just looking at these price levels that have, quietly, steadily rallied a little bit and holding some decent numbers here as we've moved through the last month or so, Brian.
Yeah, they are. What's interesting too, it's probably going to help hold up the cattle herd. I was just looking at the daily livestock report. It's sponsored by the CME, and looking at cow slaughter year to date, that's on the rise. It's about 4.2%. So when you start seeing that, you got to think this longer term picture is probably well supported. Yet you're going to, just like any market, you're going to have ups, you're going to have downs in it. Um, right now, as I said, I like those deferred contracts. I like buying puts to put a floor in the market there. A whole lot can happen. I just want to encourage people to think back the last 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, how the world's been turned upside down a couple of times, a couple of black swan events, etc. So all of those things have impact, and ultimately this could unravel in the cattle market just like anything else. So let's just be vigilant as best we can.
Brian, any thoughts on the dairy market here on this Monday?
As we look ahead, the dairy market is kind of its own worst enemy at times. We've talked about this before, where you see where the dairy market has a tendency to really ramp up production when prices are good. And we had a year with COVID, and yet I'll bring it back to, in COVID, some of the benefactors of COVID, or one of the benefactors, was the dairy industry. We had a lot of government type programs that purchased box lunches and feed and those type of, or food, cheese, those type of things, put some really premium on the cattle market, the dairy market, and it moved up substantially. It's paying the price. Production's up. We've been up a number of months in the world dairy trade production up, demand down a little bit. You got COVID-19. We're still concerned that the market's in a defensive posture. We're seeing no signal that it's not. So again, take some defensive posture, especially in those deferred months. We've seen the front months go from 18s and 19s down to 16s, getting close to 15s in August. I look at November 17.5 in that area. Same thing in December. Still worth defending.
Brian, any other final thoughts for us here before we run out of time on this Monday?
No, I'd say just stay very vigilant. Grain producers, if you got good-looking crops, really take a look at dollars per acre revenue. What I'm seeing is more of a complacency out there. We're up 1 week, down the next, up the next. No one really knows what to do or what to expect, kind of waiting on that data, as we said. But put strategic marketing into play. That is, be strategic, or have strategy on how you want to handle this.
Well, I know if producers need some advice, they can reach out to you and the team there at Total Farm Marketing just by checking out the website, totalfarmmarketing.com, or the good old-fashioned phone call and getting in touch with you guys to talk more, can't they?
They sure can. Love a phone call, 800-334-9779. Give us a jingle. Love to sit and talk with you a little bit. Don't have to take a lot of time, but we can kind of cut to the chase, see what's important to you. And, one of the big things you asked, what's important, I think just making sure that you're not leaving any stones unturned. It's probably no worse feeling than after a market moves, people say, oh, I didn't even think of that, or I didn't know this, or wish somebody would have told me. So, that's my feelings on that.
Great stuff. Great insight as always. We appreciate the time. Bryan Doherty with Total Farm Marketing. Thanks for joining us here on this Monday. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you much. Appreciate it.
Bryan Doherty with Total Farm Marketing joining us here on Market Talk, brought to you GrowMark FS. Find us online, markettalkag.com. This has been the Monday, August 2nd edition of the show. I'm Jesse Allen. Have a great afternoon.